So she's been sitting here, trying to remember, really concentrating. It's hard work. This isn't a new game. I've been playing it with her for a very long time. I was 15, she begins, her voice tentative. I start the recorder. The winter of 1963. She pauses. Is that the right year? I'm not so good with dates anymore. It's the right year, I assure her. We'd gone to Austria, she continues, to the Arlberg. Where exactly? St. Anton. That's where most Americans went in those days. I'd started skiing the previous winter, and by spring, I thought I was pretty good. The idea of going to Europe was to get in some spring skiing and improve. But the first time I got out there on the slope, I felt like a novice all over again. How come? Oh, the bumps, the weather, and the skis. They were so heavy, clunky, nothing like the equipment now. I remember just standing there on the piste, looking at all the people and the snow in the mountains, feeling completely lost. The place felt so foreign. Did you feel frightened? Frightened? Number why? Just wondering if maybe your trouble on the slopes came from fear. You know, an emotional block. She shakes her head. I wasn't frightened, but I wasn't comfortable either. We only stayed 3 days before I asked Daddy if we could go home. He said yes. I don't think he liked it there much either. Do you know why? Number I didn't ask. What about your mother? How did she like it? I don't know, she was never much of a skier. I don't remember her doing much except complain about the food, the service, the weather. It seemed like she couldn't wait to get home either. Where did you stay? At the Arlberg house. Did anything unusual happen during those 3 days? Anything you remember? She thinks for a moment, then shakes her head. Not that I can think of. No arguments? No unpleasantness at the hotel? No. You're sure? Why? What's the matter, John? Nothing's the matter. I just have this feeling you're holding something back. Some little incident or experience. Maybe something you've blocked from memory. I don't know, she says. It was a long time ago. All right, so what happened when you got back to the States? What happened? Nothing. I went back to school, and that summer I started taking ski lessons from a coach. The next year I won my first race. Then I kept on winning. That's pretty amazing. Number why? Well, if you had a setback, like feeling lost on the slopes, to turn it around like that, maybe it's easier when you're young, she says. So how did your parents take your success? They were proud, excited. They invited their friends to the house to watch me compete. They liked showing me off. Like a trophy on the mantelpiece? Sort of, yes, they liked that. And you? I don't know. Not then. When did you know? After a while. When exactly? I don't know. Was it when you stopped winning? Maybe. Because that would make sense. If their pride depended on you being a champion, and then you stopped being a champion. I guess so. Were they angry when you stopped winning? Not at first. At first? What about later? Well, sometimes, but I suppose that was my fault because I didn't want to keep competing. Why not? I don't know. Think about it, Helen. Why didn't you want to keep competing? She closes her eyes, concentrating. I don't know. Was it the pressure? The training? Did it start getting to you? No. Maybe you were tired of living up to expectations. Yours, your parents, your coaches. Maybe it was too much and it started affecting your performance. Is that possible? I don't know, John. I'm not sure. All right, just a suggestion. What about your father? Did he ski? Number, not then. What did he do? Did he ever mention what his work was? Number, only that it had to do with the military. Was he home a lot, or was he off and away on duty? He was gone a lot. At least that's how it seemed. Did he travel abroad? I don't know. He never talked about his work. But if it was military and the Cold War was still on, it's likely he went abroad. Germany, maybe. France. Did your mother say anything about it? She said she never knew where he was. She just waited for him to come home. Do you remember him being gone in the spring of 1963? Maybe, yes. He was often gone. And when was he home? What do you remember about him being in the house? He came home at night. For dinner, sometimes. Sometimes? What else? He'd have a drink. What did he drink, Helen? Do you remember? Yes, scotch. With ice. Okay, good. He came home, had a drink. Then what? He'd watch TV. And your mother? She was upstairs. What about your brother? At school. After school, he played ball. At the field. So your father was home, and you were alone with him. What else, Helen? What happened? Her voice lowers, hesitant. He wasn't always asleep after drinking. What do you mean? Her hands grip the sides of the chair. She looks at me wide-eyed and says nothing. I lean in. Helen, what happened? Her lips move, but no words come out. Take your time, I say. Concentrate. Finally, she whispers, I can't. Why not? Because if I remember, I'll see him again. The blizzard was relentless, snow piling up so high we could only walk in single file, carrying our heavy gear. After hours of trudging through the biting wind, we reached the first hut. It was packed, 20 people crammed into a tight space, but at least it offered some shelter. I managed a few hours of restless sleep before morning came. When I woke, my throat was raw, and a deep cough rattled my chest. I tried to ignore it. Staying put wasn't an option. The cold and cramped conditions would only make things worse. So we set off again, the wind clawing at us, the snow numbing every step. As we pushed on, my condition spiraled. My boyfriend noticed how sick I was and stayed close, trying to keep me warm. By the time we reached the second hut, I could barely stand. Every breath was a struggle, my chest heavy, my legs trembling. My boyfriend was scared. He was getting sick too, but his focus was on me. He knew we had to keep moving to get somewhere safe. The final hut was near civilization, but getting there felt impossible. The wind was roaring so fiercely that the roof shook as we stumbled inside. My boyfriend helped me to a bunk and went out to find a doctor. Hours passed before he returned, saying a doctor was on her way. Relief washed over me, and for the first time, I allowed myself to simply be sick, trusting help was near. When the doctor arrived, the wind outside was deafening. She couldn't examine me properly, so she focused on my boyfriend and another man, listening to their chests before giving all of us injections. It didn't seem to help. By the next morning, I was worse. My head felt like it was swelling from the inside. Sweat soaked my skin, and every muscle ached. My boyfriend left again to find more help. He later told me he found me curled up, crying, unable to move. The following days blurred together. My boyfriend stayed by my side, cooling my fever with a cloth, holding my hand and stroking my hair. He never left me, not even for a moment, until I was finally well enough to leave the mountains. When we got home, the hot shower and warm soup felt like heaven. That night, we fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, grateful to be safe. But the mountains weren't done with me. That night, I dreamed we were back on a narrow ledge, the wind howling as the world spun around us. The rocks beneath our feet began to crumble, and we had nowhere to go. I looked at my boyfriend, fear in his eyes, but he smiled, and we started laughing. We laughed as the ledge gave way, and we fell into the darkness together. I woke the next morning, still weak but better, or so I thought. By midday, my head throbbed, my vision blurred, and dark spots danced before my eyes. My boyfriend insisted on calling 911. At the hospital, they ran tests. When the doctor returned, his expression said it all. "You have a brain tumor," he said. The words hit like a sledgehammer. I couldn't believe it. I was young, healthy, active. It didn't seem possible, but there it was. The tumor was inoperable. The best they could do was offer medicine to manage the symptoms. The devastation was overwhelming. I cried until I had no tears left. But then I made a choice. If my time was limited, I wouldn't waste it. My boyfriend and I lived every moment we could. We hiked, took road trips, laughed, and loved with everything we had. Eventually, the pain became unbearable. I knew it was time to say goodbye. "I love you," I told him. "Thank you for making my life beautiful." "I love you too," he said, his voice breaking. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." We hugged and I let go. My boyfriend was shattered by my loss. He tried to stay strong, but the grief was too heavy. One day, unable to bear it, he ended his own life. And yet, this isn't truly the end. In some way, we're still here, together, always, forever.